We all know that the goal of Judaism is not to sit in the synagogue, but also to build a joyful and meaningful life for ourselves and especially for others in the world outside. And the week-long holiday starting Sunday evening called Sukkot, which means booths or huts, recalling when our ancestors lived in huts during their wanderings, takes us outside, but it's more than that. For our ancestors, these festivals, the big three, were not Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hanukkah. The big three, in fact, the one which is called the holiday of rejoicing, is Sukkot. The other two, of course, Passover and Shavuot. These were times of rebirth, of harvest, of awakening, of liberation, of thanksgiving, and concern for the future. One of the most unique qualities of Judaism, in my view, is its emphasis on joy. That's why we toast, whether it's grape juice or wine, we toast with one word, l'chaim, which really means l'simchat chaim, to the joy of life. Judaism is a faith that celebrates the goodness and fullness of life. Or as my teacher, Rabbi Yitzhak Greenberg, the modern Orthodox rabbi and friend, puts it, Judaism at its core is about the triumph of life. The triumph of life. Even our response to death is life. Our response to the Holocaust was more life, the state of Israel. The holiday which embodies this ideal of the joy of life more than any other festival is Sukkot. The prayer book identifies Sukkot. It's called in the Torah and in the prayer book as Zman Simchatenu, the season of our rejoicing. Now, at first glance, this period of the year seems to be the least suitable for a season of rejoicing. Why? If you haven't noticed, the days grow shorter. The weather in most of the Jewish world, meaning Israel and especially the Northeast, it grows colder. Grass withers. Flowers fade. The whole world seems to retreat into a state of hibernation. Maybe not in Memphis or Palm Beach or Palm Desert, but in most places, we're entering a season where it's a very difficult time for rejoicing. How much easier it would be to revel in the spring when all nature revives. Don't you think joy can be captured more readily at the beginning of a cycle instead of at the very end? Maybe not. Too often, we are inclined to rejoice in anticipation of the future. We think about the harvest, our to-do list in the days and weeks and months to come. And invariably, we're disappointed. We never achieve all that we seek. The future, if you think about it, never fully meets our expectations. And as a result, for many of us, that sense of joy either suffers or dissolves altogether. But maybe if we look back on the harvest of the past, if we adjust our mindset, maybe we can think of a different way for rejoicing as it gets darker, as it gets colder. How? A little thoughtfulness of kindness directed our way. Perhaps the return to health, or at least better health. Perhaps much needed support from friends and family during a difficult time. Sparks of love which have brightened our lives. these moments, am I talking about the past or the future? They could be both. Recollections are more than sufficient cause for rejoicing, regardless of what the future holds. The past is never so bleak that it does not contain a glimmer of hope. And that is the principle that Sukkot urges us to apply to the future. Admittedly, a joyous mood may be harder to develop at this season. It requires more courage and confidence to maintain a zest for living when nature is more in retreat than in a resurgence. That may be the purpose of Torah in commanding us to rejoice at this time. It is not an instinctive or impulsive response. It requires determination to remember the good, to remember life. And when we remember, we not only feel better, we feel blessed. Yeah, I am convinced that each and every one of us, no matter how dark it gets in the coming months, can find more than ample cause for this time of spiritual rejoicing. Just one more comment. And this wasn't planned, but I'm looking at Richard Hiller, who helped me my first year here as senior rabbi 13 years ago do something I saw in the history books of Temple Israel, because my major was American Jewish history, and I saw that there used to be sukkahs on the altar in the old temple at Poplar and Montgomery. And so I asked this gentleman in the front row to help recreate that, and some of you may remember the smell of the flower of the greenery in the old temple on what was then called the altar, or the pulpit now, or the bima. And it was a reminder of the beauty and the fragility that we are, as we sang in our opening song tonight, supposed to transform the fragile sukkah into a sukkot shalom, a shelter of peace, of wholeness, and of healing. We sang Ecclesiastes, one of the 5 scrolls. And near Ecclesiastes, the rabbis said that if you get down during this time, remember what God did. God showed Job. Job, remember him? The suffering man who lost it all, his children, his family, his health. We're told that God showed Job a 3-walled sukkah. Now, the one in the courtyard we're building on Sunday morning will have 4 walls, 4 poles. But according to the rabbis, a 3-walled sukkah is kosher, even 2.5, because it rounds up to 3. Why did God show Job a 3-walled sukkah? As a way of reminding him that the sukkah isn't really a sukkah, whether it's on the altar or outside. The sukkah is really you, your life, your shell. And every person's sukkah has 1 wall missing. Sure, everyone would like to have a 4-walled sukkah, a perfect marriage, gifted children. I talked about how ordinary is extraordinary. Enough of the gifted. A successful career, good health, a long life. But in actual life, no one has a 4-walled sukkah. sorrow, failure, disappointment, loss of health, loss of job. So God says to Job, Job, it's not only what you've lost, it's what's left that counts. Stop thinking of only the pains you suffer. Stop counting your losses. Begin counting your blessing. Sure, you've lost a wall of your sukkah, but there are 3 walls remaining. And remember, Job, that you belong to a people, the Jewish people who has mastered the art of surviving in a 3-walled sukkah. Job, your people survived dispersion, persecution, bigotries of varying intensities and severity. We even survived the Holocaust, Job. I'm updating it. Despite these deprivations, your people, Job, retained their dedication to justice, to humanity, to loving all people. And we've enriched a sick world in measure disproportionate to our meager numbers as Jews. God is saying to Job, Job, we've shown the world how to live in a 3-walled sukkah. Oh, and one last thing, Job. Because a wall of your sukkah may collapse, you have an unobstructed view of your neighbor's sukkah. And if you look carefully, you'll see that he too is missing a wall in his sukkah. The fragile sukkah reminds us that in all things fragile, though, we can find the presence of God. Life in this lifetime is too short not to treasure each day and every potential moment of being and becoming. And maybe that's why this is the holiday that's called Zman Simchatenu. Rejoice in your blessings, even and especially when it's dark and cold. And let us say, Amen.